Welcome back to If I Were on Ellen, where I get to combine my two favorite things, talking about myself and Ellen. Let's get started. This week, I'm mixing it up. I'm bringing on a guest. I guess this week's episode should be called If I Were Ellen. Today's guest is my future father-in-law, Vince Calandra Sr., and he has some amazing showbiz stories about his years working on The Ed Sullivan Show and The Mike Douglas Show. I am so excited for you guys to meet him. Let's go. So, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Woodland Hills, my future daughter-in-law.
I know, I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm like, I'm going to interview my future father-in-law.
I couldn't sleep last night. I figured, how's she going to make an 86-year-old guy look good? And
You look great all the time. Look at you in your hat and everything. I mean, you look fantastic. So let's start with how did you get started in the business? Like, you've had such a wonderful career.
It was one of those things maybe meant to be. I don't know. I was brought up by Sicilian grandparents and spoke no English and wanted to be a professional baseball player. I had scholarships to like 4 colleges. Had to go in the Army for 2 years, came out, and I went for an interview at CBS. They hired me for the mailroom. One of my deliveries was delivering mail to the Ed Sullivan office on the 14th floor. Marlo Lewis, I got to know the secretaries. One day, Mr. Lewis would like to see you. And not only was he executive vice president of programming at CBS, but he also created the Ed Sullivan Show with Ed Sullivan. He said, well, we're looking for a guy to hold cue cards for Ed, and we can't find anybody. He said, would you like to come down and meet him? So I did. I went down there. That was the start of it. And I worked my way up to like a production assistant, program coordinator. And then in '66, I became the full-time head of the talent department on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from New York, the Ed Sullivan Show.
Let's talk about 1964. You met a little band back then.
Yeah. Four little kids from Liverpool, England.
It's talking about the Beatles.
They came over to do the Ed Sullivan Show, and that established 15 minutes of fame throughout the next 90 years of my life or whatever.
So what was it that established your 15 minutes of fame?
First of all, there were 4 terrific guys. Well, basically what happened was George got sick. And they said, unless you sleep, you rest up, you're not going to be able to do the Sullivan Show tomorrow. They ran a rehearsal with the 3 guys, John, Ringo, and Paul. But they needed a stand-in. And the assistant manager, Neil Aspinall, was originally there, but he got called back to the hotel. George Harrison's sister was trying to get into the hotel, and the police and security wouldn't let her. I happened to be wearing a dark suit and a dark tie that day. And I went out there and actually stood in for George with his guitar, which I don't know what it would probably be worth nowadays.
I know. Why didn't you keep that?
Why didn't you keep that? Right. I could have bought you a nice wedding gift with that one.
That's right. Well, I mean, I have a little photo here.
That's me. That's a gag. Sullivan had originally wore that wig as a gag.
Sullivan, I was embarrassed, so the production manager came over and they, of course, put that on my head, and that's why that was my big claim to fame, standing in for George at the Sullivan Show.
So I'm gonna call out a bunch of different musicians' names, and I want you to tell me your favorite story or behind-the-scenes thing that you have on them. Mick Jagger.
My favorite rock and roll guy. Ed Sullivan says, Vince, go and tell Mick Jagger he's got to wash his hair. I said, okay. You want me to go and tell Mick Jagger to wash his hair? And beside that, he's got to change the lyric to let's spend the night together to let's spend some time together. So that was my intro to him. So I went up there and told him. I didn't tell him about washing his hair, but I asked him about changing the lyric. And he said, fuck off, mate. So if you ever notice the show and notice the tape, when he comes to that line, he's like looking up and he's rolling his eyes.
Did he change the lyrics to it?
Yeah, he changed it.
Tell me about
Oh, my all-time favorite.
Sinatra.
Sinatra. Married like a couple of months. Cal Never Hotel opens. My wife, who was an ex-airline stewardess, got us like passes to fly to Lake Tahoe. She wants to go and see Sinatra. Okay, barely got a room. Of course, I went up and to the reservation desk and said, is it possible I can come and see Sinatra? And the guy laughed at me. He said, you got to be kidding. He said, we're sold out, a long line and waiting list. Get to know my wife. She says, no, we're gonna try to go in. So she gets all dolled up like 2 hours before the show. Gigantic line, okay, all dressed up, and I'm standing there, and I have to go to the bathroom. Now I go to the bathroom. This guy who I've seen around the casino, who I found out later is like the casino boss, and he starts talking to me. Okay, he said, "Oh, hey, how are you? How are you?" He goes like, you're going to see the show?" And I kind of laughed, and I said, "Well, no, I don't think so." He said, "Well, where are you from?" So I'm from New York, and I happened to mention Jilly Rizzo, who was then Sinatra's best friend and bodyguard. But I didn't know him that good. He used to come by the theater, get tickets once in a while for his kids or whatever. So I mentioned Jilly Rizzo's name, just out of the blue. And the guy says, "You know Jilly Rizzo? You were a friend of Jilly's?" I said, "I know him, just come out." So he drags me out. And he says, "Who are you with?" I said, "Well, with my wife." He said, "Where is she?" I said, "She's a block and a half down online, okay?" He says, "Go and get her." I go and get her. And she's fighting me, yelling at me. "What do you mean? We're not going, But I said, "Just come with me." Guy puts, the red thing. He said, checks me off. "No, I'm tipping the guy." I said, "No, can't accept the tip. You are a guest of Mr. Sinatra."
Mr.
My
Sinatra.
whole life flashed in front of me, and Jilly Rizzo. And I'm going, "Oh my God, Jilly Rizzo!" I mean, I didn't, Now, I sat, it was a 2.5 hour show with Sinatra and Dean Martin. Sinatra breaking plates and Dean Martin singing all the wrong lyrics, and they're going back and forth. And I'm sitting there not enjoying anything. Not only they would not accept the tip, I had like a steak dinner. I paid for nothing. And I left there, I was actually shaking. I'm thinking, oh my God, if they find out, I don't know this guy that well. And I said, and I'm thinking, well, maybe Jilly's not there, he's not in town. And he wasn't in town. The next morning, what do you think? I go to the coffee shop. And he's sitting in the coffee shop, Jilly, having coffee. And I was talking so fast, he couldn't understand what I was trying to tell him, but I was trying to tell him that, I went to see the show, blah, blah, blah. Take good care of you? And he said, "Yeah, it was great." He said, "Great." So that was my Frank Sinatra story.
My father-in-law stood in for the Beatles, so I thought the least I could do is stand in for Ellen this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want to hear more, there are so many more stories that he has. There's one about a bear. Want to see me in a bear costume? Maybe ask about that one. Well, that's it. Until next time.